Trillions of dollars lost, endless lies, hundreds of thousands of innocent people killed. You know what I'm referring to. 1990s hit Nickelodeon game show Double Dare. If only the green slime hadn't been made from spent nuclear material. Oh, wait, no, it's actually the 20-year U.S. war on Afghanistan. Sorry, I thought it was Double Dare. I'm Lee Camp, and this is the most censored news. Why am I talking about Afghanistan? The U.S. withdrew the troops in mid-2021. Old news. It's like being upset that Conan O'Brien didn't get to take over The Tonight Show, except that Conan didn't kill 1 million people. Jay Leno possibly, but Conan, no. Anyway, I'm talking about Afghanistan because the full accounting of who exactly enriched themselves with the unimaginable tragedy of that war in Afghanistan has still not happened. Most Americans don't even know who the worst profiteers of that 20-year war are. To begin with, the top of the U.S. military structure have raked in millions of dollars. But I thought it was called service. I thought those generals were serving their country, not for money, but I thought they were profiting in the soul enrichment and pride that comes with leading the world's largest and bloodiest machine of organized human murder. Sorry, I got halfway through that sentence and then I got tired of my own bullshit. But it turns out the Pentagon's top generals are not there for soul enrichment. They're there to get filthy rich. They put the soul back in asshole. The 8 generals who commanded American forces in Afghanistan between 2008 and 2018 have gone on to serve on more than 20 corporate boards. In case that sounds innocent, when a top general is on a corporate board, they get paid insane amounts of money for doing just about nothing. Sounds like being a politician, doesn't it? What does the corporation get out of it? They get to sound all fancy schmancy by running around town going, "We have a 4-star general on our board." And they get to make it clear to the current Pentagon higher-ups that they will all be paid handsomely once they've been put out to pasture at the human murder machine. That must be an awkward conversation. Listen, Stanley, you're pushing 70. These young guys coming in, I mean, they're just able to murder people at 2, even 3 times your speed. The whole murder industry has just really picked up speed in the last few years, you know, and last I checked, we're still using a rotary missile launcher. It's time to call it a day and just collect that pension, don't you think? Anyway, paying these generals crazy salaries for doing essentially nothing is basically bribery done after the fact. You see, you hand a 4-star general $500,000 in unmarked bills while he's serving in the Pentagon. That's very illegal. But you hand him that $500,000 after he's completed his time at the Pentagon and done all the favors you've already asked. That's totally legal. Toad's cool. But don't forget to write on the front of the giant cash envelope 4 corporate board duties. That's the other thing you have to do. Actually, sometimes you don't even have to do that. You just call it a consulting fee. Yeah, the check will be in the mail, and thanks for consulting with me on how much money I should bribe you with. Yeah, I really appreciate your advisory role on that. As the Washington Post said of these generals who led the completely pointless and catastrophic war in Afghanistan, they have amassed influence within businesses, at universities, and in think tanks, in some cases selling their experience in a conflict that killed an estimated 176,000 people, cost the United States more than $2 trillion, and concluded with the restoration of Taliban rule. While the Washington Post is making the correct point there, those estimates of money and lives are way off. The $2 trillion does not include the $21 trillion of unaccounted for adjustments at the Pentagon during the Afghanistan war years. And that 176,000 killed is probably hundreds of thousands off, considering Brown University's Costs of War project found that the U.S. has killed 6 million people with the global war on terror. Boy, it sounds like when you've been one of the main people responsible for such a horrific display of brutality and crimes against humanity, maybe you shouldn't be made rich by it. I mean, We have Son of Sam laws in 40 states that are supposed to stop murderers from getting rich from their publicity. Yet, since retiring, General Stanley McChrystal, who oversaw the Obama-era troop surge there, has served as a board member or advisor for at least 10 companies, making millions of dollars off them. He also leverages his experience to secure lucrative consulting contracts on topics distant from defense work, such as managing the coronavirus pandemic for state and local governments. He was also on JetBlue's board for 9 years and was paid more than $1.3 million. He also made over $1 million for 7 years on the board of Navistar International. Hell, why not dress him up in the Ronald McDonald outfit? Pay him $1 million to dance at children's birthday parties, huh? And McChrystal didn't even leave the Pentagon under honorable circumstances. He was booted after a Rolling Stone profile by Michael Hastings portrayed him as a runaway general who hated civilians and civilian leadership. Despite the scandal, he remained in the business world's favor partly because of then-President Barack Obama's decision to let him retire with 4 stars, a move that also left him with an annual taxpayer-funded pension of at least $149,700. Jesus, that's a hell of a pension. I bet his dental floss is covered too. This is bullshit. I knew I should have gone into shooting people rather than comedy. I knew comedy just doesn't. But McChrystal is not the only general violating the Son of Sam laws. General Joseph F Dunford Jr., the Afghan commander in 2013 and 2014, joined the board of Lockheed Martin, the biggest Pentagon contractor. Well, at least he moved into something he knew well. He went from ordering the use of weapons that kill innocent people to selling the weapons that kill innocent people. You know, it's like when a heavy drug user gets into selling drugs. You're kind of like, makes sense. He was always hanging around, really learned the business. And some of these war profiteers didn't stop there. They kept running around the revolving door of corruption. Current Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who at one point in his military career was the head of U.S. Central Command, which oversaw both the Afghan and Iraq wars, he later joined the board of weapons giant Raytheon, making up to $1.7 million in the process. Then, of course, he ran back to the Pentagon to be the Secretary of Defense. Oh, Pentagon, why can't I quit you? Then there's retired General John R. Allen, who's the president of the Brookings Institute, which has received as much as $1.5 million over the last 3 years from Northrop Grumman, another defense giant. And let's not forget our old friend David H. Petraeus, who preceded Allen and later pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge for providing classified materials to a former mistress and biographer. He's a partner at KKR, a private equity firm and director of its Global Institute. Working at a private equity firm may sound harmless, but in fact, it includes promoting some of the worst entities on Earth, such as when Petraeus was running around the country pushing fracking. Hi, I've spent my career destroying other countries. Now I've brought my skills home to America. Another important point here. You know how you know these corporate board positions are bullshit and basically just amount to bribery after the favors? These generals would be the worst employees ever. Why would you hire? They lie endlessly, as seen in this Intercept article. They lost trillions of dollars, some of it literally just going missing. The last job they had, the people they managed were filled with corruption and thievery. And on top of all that, they killed loads of innocent people. Who would hire any of these guys? I see here your last job was as a manager at Applebee's, and it says here you lost $13 billion and murdered 214 innocent people. Well, besides being a bit overqualified, I think this is the job for you. Welcome to the Grubhub family. Before we wrap up this discussion of gross war profiteering, I would be remiss to ignore the contractors who got rich directly from the war in Afghanistan. Pentagon spending has totaled an almost unimaginable $14 trillion plus since the start of the Afghan war in 2001, up to one-half of which, catch a breath here, went directly to defense contractors. Again, that's not counting the over $20 trillion that was unaccounted for, but we don't really discuss that. To put such a figure in perspective, the $75 billion in Pentagon contracts awarded to Lockheed Martin alone that year was significantly more than 1.5 times the entire 2020 budget for the State Department and the Agency for International Development, which together totaled $44 billion. We're giving more to Lockheed Martin than the fucking State Department? I guess that makes sense, seeing as Lockheed creates things to blow people up, and the State Department ostensibly is meant for diplomacy so that no one needs to get blown up. But nowadays, even the State Department is simply just the propaganda to justify the fact that the U.S. empire blows a lot of people up. Yeah. Companies benefiting from the buildup of the past 20 years also included logistics and construction firms like Kellogg, Brown & Root, KBR, and Bechtel, as well as armed private security contractors like Blackwater and DynCorp. The best-known reconstruction and logistics contractor in Iraq and Afghanistan was Halliburton through its KBR subsidiary. Not only did these companies snatch up billions upon billions of dollars to destroy the lives of countless Afghan people and Iraqi people, but they also were waist-deep in overcharging, fraud, and abuse. The Congressional Commission on Wartime Contracting found that fraud and abuse totaled $30 to $60 billion in Iraq and Afghanistan. Again, this shouldn't really surprise us. You know the expression, there's no honor among thieves? Well, the U.S. military-industrial complex is basically a large-scale mafia on steroids with little gold bars on their shoulders. They kill like the mafia, they threaten like the mafia, they extort and bribe and pay off like the mafia, and they steal like the mafia. So how surprised should we be to see breathtaking fraud in the midst of this system? However, despite all of these trillions of dollars thrown around, there were a lot of people who did not get rich from America's 20-year war. Can you guess which people those are? Eventually, in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were more contractors than soldiers, and about 3/4 of the contractor workforce there was made up of people from countries like Nepal or the Philippines or Iraqi citizens, poorly paid. At times, they received as little as $3,000 per year. A 2017 analysis by the Cost of War Project documented abysmal labor conditions and major human rights abuses. So while the sociopaths at the top get immensely rich, the hardworking people, often risking their lives on the ground, barely get by. Kinda sounds like the entire American experiment. That's the most censored news for this week, but check out all of our episodes at youtube.com/behindtheheadlines and make sure you subscribe. Also, join our free email list by texting the word censored to 33777 and keep fighting.